Okay, so we are looking at photosynthesis at the H1 level. We'll be looking at the photosynthetic pigments, which are pigment molecules embedded in the thylakoid membranes in the chloroplast, and they function to absorb light. So light contains light energy, right? It's an energy. And the energy, right, will be converted by the photosynthetic pigments into chemical energy. Okay, so there are two types of mainly two types of photosynthetic pigments. We have the chlorophylls and the carotenoids. So before we look at each of the pigments, right, let's look at what is light. Light is actually an electromagnetic wave, or sometimes we call radiation, electromagnetic radiation. So sunlight, right, is actually a mixture of different radiations, right? So you have the infrared, you have the UV. So visible light is one type of wave or one type of radiation in sunlight. And the different kinds of radiation, right, all have a range of different wavelengths because they are wave, right? So they have wavelengths. So in the range of wavelengths that is considered as visible light, there are different colors corresponding to different wavelengths within the range of wavelengths considered as visible light. Right, so you have the lower wavelength that is more purplish, bluish. Then the highest wavelength within visible light is reddish. Okay, so in this topic, right, or when we talk about light, sometimes we say colors, right? Sometimes we say wavelengths. So when we say different wavelengths, right, it really means different colors because again, the different colors have different wavelengths, right? Yeah. So these two words, right, colors and wavelengths, in the context of light and photosynthesis, right, is kind of interchangeable. So sometimes if you hear me say colors, sometimes you hear me say wavelengths, I'm talking about the same thing lah. Just don't be confused. Okay. So with that, let's look at chlorophylls. So chlorophylls absorbs mainly two colors or two different range of wavelengths. Right, we have the red color, which is 600 plus nanometer of wavelength, and the blue-violet colors, which is 400 plus nanometer of wavelength. Right, so mainly chlorophylls absorbs these two colors and reflect green light. Not all green light is reflected, but most of the green light that comes into the contact with chlorophyll will be reflected. That's why we see chlorophyll as green, and that's what gives the leaves the green color, right, because of the chlorophyll, unless masked by other colored pigments. Okay, so let's look at the structure of the chlorophyll. Right, this is how chlorophyll looks like. At the bottom, right, of the chlorophyll, there is the phytol tail, which is hydrophobic. You can see that it is made up of only C and H. So it's hydrophobic and function to insert the chlorophyll into the thylakoid membrane. Right, so from what you learned last year, right, any membrane, right, including the thylakoid membrane, is made up of phospholipid molecules. It's a phospholipid bilayer, and phospholipid molecules have the hydrophobic fatty acid tails, right? So this hydrophobic phytol tail will be able to interact with the fatty acid tails of the phospholipid molecules, allowing the chlorophyll to be inserted or embedded in the thylakoid membrane. Then on top, right, that's the head structure, right? It's also called a porphyrin ring or porphyrin head. But it is hydrophilic. You can see the presence of oxygen, nitrogen, and ion, magnesium ion in the center as well, right? So that allows the hydrophilic head to be interacting with the aqueous stroma. So it will be found in the stroma, right? The head structure is also flat, right? And unlike this picture, right, where the head is kind of upright, it in actual fact it will lie flat, right, parallel to the surface of the thylakoid membrane. So that increases the surface area covered by the head, and therefore allows more light to be absorbed by the head. So the head is the part of the chlorophyll that actually absorbs the light. The light energy, right, will be used by the chlorophyll to excite electrons. That's how the light energy is converted to chemical energy, right? Light is used to excite electrons, right? So the excited electrons carries energy, and that is chemical energy, right? And that will happen in the light-dependent reactions. The excited high-energy electrons will be used to make ATP and reduced NADP. So the ATP and reduced NADP then carries the chemical energy. So you learn that later in a later video when we talk about light-dependent reactions. All right. Looking back at the structure of the chlorophyll, like at the head, there is this R, right? This side group. Right? So there are different kinds of side group for different chlorophylls. And changing the side group, right, changes the structure of the head a little, which allows a slightly different color or wavelength of light to be absorbed. It will still be mainly blue, violet, and red. But then within red, there are different shades of red, right? And within blue, violet, there's also a range of blue, violet, right? So different chlorophylls will absorb different shades of red and blue, violet, depending on the side groups that they have. Right? So you can imagine, right, on the thyroid membrane, you have many different chlorophylls, right? So together, they can absorb a wider range of wavelengths or colors within the blue, violet, and red region. So that increases the amount of light that can be absorbed as well. So that's how chlorophyll helps to absorb light. Then move on to the second type of photosynthetic pigments, that's the carotenoids. They also absorb mainly at the blue-violet region. Right? So a bit similar, overlapping with the chlorophyll, but there are, again, many different types of carotenoids, right? So each type of carotenoids will absorb at a slightly different colors or slightly different wavelength. Right? So while mainly blue-violet, again, there's a range, right, within this blue-violet region of wavelengths, right? Different carotenoids have different colors. So sometimes when we see leaves, especially, right, with different colors or different shades of green, or within the green color, there are some spots that have different colors. Those may or usually are due to the carotenoids. All right, so they serve as the accessory pigment, meaning they do not use the light energy to excite electrons, unlike chlorophylls, but they absorb the light energy and pass it to the chlorophyll. Right? So the chlorophyll receive more energy, right? Those that they absorb themselves, and also those absorbed by the carotenoids. So there's more energy to excite electrons for the light-dependent reactions. Again, we'll see this later in a later video. All right. So these are the two types of photosynthetic pigments. Right. Then we have this question now. Christmas just wasn't too far away. It was quite recent, right? So during Christmas, you see a lot of such plants, right? So the red color portion, right, as you can see from the veins and all that, they are actually leaves, right? Red colored leaves. So the question here is, are these red colored leaves capable of photosynthesis? So think about it, yeah? Right, so the answer is yes, they are. So there are still photosynthetic pigments present. Just that there's so much of these red pigments that we can't really see the green, right? We can't really see the chlorophyll green color. Okay, but they are present. And also, right, since the leaves reflect red light, of course we see them as red, right? But the blue-violet light is not reflected, right? And most photosynthetic pigments actually absorbed at the blue-violet region, right? Both chlorophylls and carotenoids. So the blue-violet light are still able to be absorbed by the photosynthetic pigments that are present. So this allows the light energy to be absorbed for the light-dependent reactions, and therefore for photosynthesis. Okay, so just something to know lah. All these red-colored looks like petals are actually leaves. The flowers, right, are actually those green knobs in the center, right? So actually the flowers are very small, right? Just some common knowledge, yeah?